This is the translation of the chat that Robert had with Swaruu sometime between 2018-2019. I decided to translate it and provide it to you as it is still valid, and a lot of it applies a lot to the current situation, so we can understand the mechanics of humanity manipulation. You already know that the universe does not tie you to a race, and jumping from race to race is not only very common, it is the norm and the very nature of souls. Humanity as a race does not exist. Humanity in 3D is a compendium or mixture of countless extraterrestrial races using essentially the same biosuit. I have a question regarding that, the human suit. You say that the human race does not exist as such, I understand, but how does this fit with the Lyrian race? I thought humans are Lyrians, their descendants, so in what way do they not exist as a race? Yes, but that is the basis for the creation of the so-called biosuit or human body. In themselves, as 3D humanoid beings, they are the only ones in existence. Genetically altered by manipulation of consciousness and by direct manipulation in the laboratory with the support of the 3D generating lunar frequencies to suppress the connection of humans with the original source. Because if they had a total connection, they would reactivate their DNA, erasing the changes that have been made in the laboratory. For that, the suppression of frequencies. What laboratory? You mean Matrix 3D from the moon? Multiple ones throughout the centuries, not just one. Who has done this? We have already said that it is through mind control how changes are made, or how the artificially made changes are reinforced. But it has been also said that there were no genetic modifications, but mainly mental ones, right? Yes, mental. So how do labs fit into this? As a species, no, not in the laboratory. However, throughout history, changes in the laboratory have been made, but as you know, they are naturally reversed. The only way to prevent them from reversing is to keep humans in a low vibratory state. Even today, things are made in laboratories, but they do not define the entire species. Reptiles have done it, yes? Mostly, yes. There is no doubt that changes have been made in the laboratory, but not the changes as in defining the species. They are isolated changes here and there through thousands of years. Asks Robert. What changes are we talking about? They change from Lyrian to human. Asks Robert. That is, are we regressing? It is not regression. It is change. Asks Robert. But degenerative? From a point of view, yes. For humans, yes, the change is negative. The biggest change is because the human body has been designed to be a container for multiple souls that come with different requirements depending on the species they used to belong to or still belong to. That's why I don't see it as a species, but as a biosuit. So the reptiles did that, but now multiple ET races take advantage and participate in the simulation game? Maybe these ET races did it by cooperating with the reptiles then, and all the blame is put on the reptiles. Any race that has starseeds abducts in one way or another to prepare human mother's father or baby to be able to host a soul of a certain kind of energy, including Taygeta. Although not anymore, because there is no entry or much entry of Taygetan souls, as you already know. Asks Robert. So most of humanity has been abducted? Humanity involved in a gestation of starseeds, or the starseeds themselves, yes, they have been abducted. They have to prepare the mother's body to be able to support a baby who enters with a soul energy or voltage greater than their own. Nobody is a bigger slave than the one who believes himself to be free without being so. People's mind, their consciousness, is what generates reality. This is the first problem to face to understand the mental control of the Matrix. It is the basis, and it applies to everything that we could call the physical universe. Speaking very 3D, all the information that your brain receives comes from your 5 senses. Everything is perception and agreements of how things should be seen and interpreted. The outer world is the mirror of the inner world. Whatever a person is paying attention to receives more of that. If a person is immersed in a life full of problems and suffering, then under the very real law of attraction, he will only get more of the same. Everything is the perception and agreements as to see and interpret things. You are literally creating your own reality based on what you have your attention on. It is the basic operation of the law of attraction, and all people are subject to this law, whether they like it or not, agree or not, understand it or not. It is like gravity on the planet. It is simply there, and you live under its influence. So, by knowing how the universe works, reality can be altered and managed. This, from a personal or group point of view, creating an agreement on how something in particular should be interpreted. This is where mind control comes in. The fact is this, and it is said, the human race is being manipulated from the most basic perception by an intellectually superior race. I know that the intellectually superior part hurts particularly, but it is the truth and should be mentioned. Human beings are not the most intelligent race in the universe, as they have been led to believe by the very controllers of the Matrix. So they must understand that they must strive with what they have at hand to counteract the mind that controls them and which is several steps ahead. It is not that they cannot be or have the same level of intellect as said intellectually superior race. What happens is that they have been conditioned to function with less capacity than the optimal one, with the same mind control, with the clear purpose of controlling them and exploiting them. If you control people's perception, you control what people manifest for themselves. What the genetic engineering of the Earth does not yet understand, or is just taking its first steps here, is that you cannot go far by artificially modifying genes, moving matter. The latter applies not only to the matrix or the outside world within the Earth, but it mainly affects people's genes. Biological physical bodies do not have their genesis in the material world. They come as a reflection of the spiritual world. However, the separation between the spiritual and physical world is only something that is understood like this on Earth, with its predilection for studying things as the sum of their parts, reductionism. But in reality, everything is a unity, where the physical world is part of the spiritual world, where there are no clear divisions, only limitations of perception according to the level of consciousness of each person and their frequency. So the real way, and the one that advanced races use to modify the genes of another species, is to make the species itself modify its own genes using its own creative consciousness, and this is achieved in the case of the Earth with mind control. The genes themselves are designed so that it is the consciousness of the body itself that turns them on, turns them off, reads some and not others, or rewrites or creates entirely new ones. It is by design that they work like this, because it is the person who lives them in a body who needs to manipulate them with their own consciousness and perception of reality. Genes are a molecular structure in geometric form, so-called sacred or mathematical, that are the reflection of the attention that consciousness has on the potential energy to create sustained energy points that will manifest in matter, in this case a gene and subsequently a DNA strand. When there is a medium with potential energy and it is influenced by a consciousness that has something in mind, an intention with constant attention, a standing wave gets formed. The standing waves are those waves in which certain points of the wave, called nodes, remain immobile. A standing wave is formed by the interference of two waves of the same nature with equal amplitude, wavelength, or frequency that advance in opposite directions through a medium. If enough attention is given to the nodes, these points will form the energetic pieces called atoms or atomic structure that in turn combined will form the molecules that are the most basic or simple elements of a material substance that retain the same properties. So the potential energy field, ether reference Nikola Tesla, upon receiving the stimulus of consciousness, manifests the material part of the energy, and creates the form that is the perfect reflection of the consciousness that has emitted it as a mold reflection. Where I'm going with all of this is that if you control the perception of consciousness, you control what it will manifest. You will control what he will create as a world, including his own body. This is the great why of mind control on Earth. You only need to implant ideas in the population, agreements about how things should be perceived. You will be able to make a new race. When souls are interested in the experience of being part of that new race, or you can create a slave race to exploit. And you don't need a test tube to genetically limit a population. It is easier to do it by manipulating ideas and perception. Yes, it takes much longer, it is true. But that intellectually superior race, if they have something, it is time. Because they do not reside on the same plane as humans. They reside where time is malleable, only semi-linear. They can wait. They have patience. And what they fear the most is that someone will be aware of the veracity of this information. You must focus on what you really want in a frame free of thoughts of escaping what you don't want. Now, the problem is that what they really want is also manipulated. So what is needed is the change of the value system of a population. It is not an easy task because, as it has been proven, at least here, you cannot change people. They can only be invited or offered an alternative. But if it is not offered to them, they can never know that, yes, there is another alternative in the universe. Outside of the Earth, among other races, there exists this classification: primary races and secondary races. A primary race is one that is the basis of others, created with the intention, focus, awareness of what we would call the original source. A secondary race is one that was created using the mind control concepts described above, either with a goal to create a new one for constructive creative purposes or for exploitation purposes. In this case, the Lyrian race and its variants, including the Taigetan race, are primary races because they are the result of the intention of the original source using the attention of the consciousnesses interested in living an experience as members of said race. The human race is from the Lyrian race family, but its DNA has been modified and its function limited to 3D using the method described above by another race. Therefore, it is classified as a secondary race. However, each human being and each human body has within it everything necessary to activate genetically and consciously. The only thing that limits the human being is the notion that they are limited. They live that limitation, so under the law of attraction, they will receive more of that limitation. This is the basis of the mind control subject. Asks Robert. The human race is from the family of the Lyrian races, but its DNA has been modified and its functioning limited to 3D using the method described above by another race, therefore it is classified as a secondary race. A question. I understand that DNA is modified by the matrix because we ourselves modify it, led by mind control and by limitations that the matrix makes us believe, yes? It is correct, yes. I know that with the above, I am going against the geneticists and the Sumerian tablets, against the Popol Vuh. It also hurts to be told that they are controlled by an intellectually superior race and that they are a secondary race. But it is the truth. If they don't know the nature of the problem, they won't be able to solve it. Comments Robert. There is no other slave than the one who doesn't want to be aware of that fact. And I have also said that in each human being there is everything necessary to awaken, to recreate itself, to activate all their DNA. Do you know what is done here quite regularly, talking about DNA? Comments Robert. No, tell me. This, what was said above, that the human being has everything within each cell to be all that it can be in its full potential and to be free and connected to the source, is not a theory. It is something that is empirically known from here. We have extracted many people already, extracted in life by the ship. Comments Robert. I would like to connect to the source. You already are a lot, don't doubt that. So these people enter the medpod or medical pods of our ships. Our medical technology takes a record and reads all of a person's DNA, captures it with a high energy, super high resolution hologram, and in a way that I can describe in detail later, it activates all of their DNA by changing their body to what it really is, according to their original intention reflection of their soul. They come out whole, different, healthy, unrecognizable physically, but they remain themselves, their memories, their identity and values. Asks Robert. And what characteristics do these humans have? In itself, strictly speaking, you don't need any medpods to activate your DNA, only your mind, your consciousness. The problem is that being inside the matrix, they have agreements with themselves that are mainly that they wanted to have the experience as limited humans for the spiritual advancements and other intentions that this experience can give them. Asks Robert. What are the interests of the controllers? Why this invasive control of the entire world population? They serve them as farm animals. They are farm animals to them. They do not exploit them for a single purpose, but for a set of reasons, maximizing resources. From the archontic energy exploitation, the exploitation of the population for meat in various subcategories. Some races use secretion from human glands, others like meat, especially the children and women. Sexual exploitation too. A reptile being and others uses a human organic portal to exploit another person as a sex slave, to drain the energy and for fun. They are also used for multiple rituals, especially boys and girls less than 13, babies and newly born, and young virgins. They also use human skin for manufacturing of bags and clothing for other races, mainly reptiles. This is extremely widespread. Also, they are used for the elaboration of elixirs. And finally, they are used as slave labor for multiple reasons, and also genetic farming of all kinds and purposes. Comments Robert. Thank you, Swaruu, for being honest with me. This is very sad. But your answer will come out to the light, so that people are aware of it. Thank you. People should know this. Asks Robert. Another thing that I understand is that The ET disclosure by governments or leaders of any kind, such as religious one, would have to raise doubts and make the population suspect something. Am I correct? The ET disclosure is taking place, like it or not, and they do not control it in its entirety as before. It has gotten out of hand. What they do is try to control or guide what is disclosed to earn more time, because their society is falling apart. They try to guide the disclosure as much as they can. They also attempt to confuse and flood it with disinformation, similar to the real information, to create confusion, since they cannot eliminate or suppress the real one. Asks Robert. In what way could the society change, or what would the society need to do to get out of this control, if there is anything we can do? Contrary to what you think, the key is not in the work of trying to persuade and organizing themselves in order to fight against it in general. The key is individual self-development. No one can change the views and belief systems of another person. These are good news, because the success of the human liberation does not depend on others or other people. The individual, in a completely isolated way, has 100% control over what happens and ultimately on changes in society. Don't wait to be worthy of something tomorrow, or wait for tomorrow to know enough or any other excuse. Today, they should be and act as a 5D person would, living in an advanced planet. Even though, to a very large extent, they will find contrast between what they want to be and what happens around them, then they should act as if they were guests there. But they should be as they imagine their ideal self to be, immediately adopting the values they want to see in others, in the society, and especially themselves. The event, widely publicized by social networks, is you. You are the event. Do not expect that it will happen as something external to you, because there is nothing outside of you, no material world. There is only mind. Your world, your reality is in your mind. There is no objective external world. It is a great illusion, and therefore they do not understand that they are not victims. Everything good and bad in their lives, you are the ones generating it. Many villains in their lives are not real people, are reflections of their subconscious materializing outside. The change is you. The only real thing is you. The event has no date, and it is because the event is something individual and can be today for you or for anyone. With internal work, with the change in attitude, that will be reflected to the outside world, where you will find people who share your same feeling, because they have a compatible frequency. They attract. They are part of the lives of each of those compatible people. This will lead to society change, to reflect the new attitude and the new way of seeing and dealing with things. Each person on earth is the key to change. Don't criticize the others. Be only responsible for yourself. Asks Robert. I imagine this all starts with the educational system. How could it change, or what subjects do you think should change and should be incorporated, and which ones erased? Or what would be the best way to start educating the population? I don't know if age is important in all this. I imagine it's easier to educate a child than an adult. Any change they make at that level is just a patch. It is of not much use to incorporate subjects such as meditation or yoga in schools when the entire system is completely wrong. The educational system is designed to eliminate creativity of the children and turn them into parakeets, where they get rewarded when they repeat well what controllers imposed on them. It suppresses individuality, destroys the intuition and creativity, puts them in victim modes, and trains from a very early age to be useful to society, or productive and socially responsible person. But this means being a slave mind, controlled to believe that this is life, that's how life is. The educational system, like so many other things, should be discarded altogether, and from there, an entirely new one should be developed, based on the holographic society, where each individual is given the same opportunities, where each individual follows what they desire, what they want to learn, science, arts. The individual and his interests are in control, not society, not an external authority. And above all, he or she should be given access to all the information about all things, all information about the whole planetary culture. Thank you, Swaruu, for this talk. Thank you to both. Until tomorrow.